everybody should do the attribution. The first one is everybody should do. Second one is we should prioritize what we should do. The purpose. Third one is we should start as simple as possible. Most importantly, you should continuous learning and experimenting.
You have to sometimes challenge the model. Let's say a brand is spending 10 crores. Now somebody comes and says creativity, let's do 3 times or 4 times. That requires courage, conviction, and the ability of the stakeholders to say, okay, let's do it.
So we decided the fact that we will put this entire communication into a attention testing exercise. The communication had a star, but the star was coming in probably in the 5th or the 6th minute. So the first feedback was of bring that lady up front so that the attention goes from the very first second.
Hello everybody. So this is a podcast which will be on channel outcomes and attribution, and we have a marquee panel here. Here I have L.V. Krishnan from TAM, we have Raghavendra who is from Jyoti Labs, and we have Karthik who is from Omnicom. This part 2 is on how to build attribution models. So what you're saying is that one, it has to be a continuous process.
Absolutely.
Completely. And second is you must start with a clean slate. No assumptions is what you're saying.
Absolutely correct.
So before, let's say, a company or a brand goes into attribution, is there something that needs to be done first? What are the first things that one needs to take care of?
I think first is a mathematical relationship you're trying to build between whatever you are doing in marketing inputs to what is impacting, say, your business. I'm doing multiple things, and what is the impact on sales? Which essentially means I have to build a model. Even the fundamentals of any model will start with certain mental assumptions or mental model of how, to my earlier point, how advertising really works. Is it a strong force, weak force? Is it only advertising? What about distribution? What about, let's say I'm selling a winter cream. What about temperature? So you have to think through all the possible variables, and obviously when you're building a mathematical model, it has to be numbers, some form of numbers. If it is climate, then I have to look at climate data. So for example, this year, the monsoons came early. So you have to think through whatever is relevant and then start building a model. It doesn't matter who builds it, as long as it is high quality, as long as you believe and you understand it. It cannot be a black box. You should be able to explain all the results. And then you test. You need some good quality data. Minimum at least 3 to 3.5 years of data, weekly data is preferred. You do multiple models. With machine learning, you can build multiple models, maybe as high as 10,000 models, 20,000 models. And then you arrive at a few models, and the experts actually see which models work. Think of Google Map as an example. Why do we use a map? Because of a fair degree of accuracy that it tells you from point A to point B. Yes, there may be some minor errors, but most often, if it gets you through that, you're going to use the map. Same thing, if you have this model, it keeps on telling you, I did this input, I learned this, now I'm changing this. Oh, in the next month, what the model is telling me is actually change this allocation. Increase, say, print or decrease print or increase TV or decrease TV or increase whatever that mix could be from a media standpoint. It could also tell you not only media but also distribution. Actually, you don't do offer. The elasticity on distribution is so high, and in the pricing elasticity is good, actually raise prices. I've seen some models done, beautiful models where companies able to rise the price, which is the ultimate goal for many of the companies, and that increases profitability. So it will take a bit of time. It is a big mindset shift. The biggest buy-in has to come from all the stakeholders, from the top, from the client side, and also the people who are delivering the goods. It will take time, and once you get it, it is magic.
So you're saying the mindset shift.
Absolutely.
So why is the shift? Why is it the shift?
The shift is happening because it may challenge some of your own mental models. I have been doing this.
Challenge mental models.
I have been doing this for last 15 years. Now it is telling me something totally different. It's not comfortable. It's not sitting well.
There are some points which I want to add to this one. You should ask, why are you doing this? Okay. A Obviously, why we are doing this is you want to look at, is there a pattern, a learning which I can adapt into the future decision making process. Research earlier used to say that I will do a historical study, census study, then it will become panel based study, and there is something called pre-event, there is something called post-event. But as we are talking today, you are in the live market. That is, in the stock market, you are seeing the outcome here. This model is already happening in my Google Buy, it is already happening in Program Buy, it is already happening. In a quick commerce, an exposure is linked to your outcome also. Okay. So that's the reason we should do this attribution model. Today you're in the market, recipe ban raha hai, sambar pak raha hai, आपको अभी डाल के अभी decide करने का. That's the attribution model. Input, output, there and then. That is so important.
So one of the things I have seen with a lot of clients is that they have a lot of data which is all over the place and in silos. I have seen that with a lot of not so professional, not so top end kind of
Everybody
brands.
has it. Even top end also has it. So much data.
So in fact, Satya Raghavan in one of the earlier episodes said it emphatically. The first thing is get all your data on a cloud, for God's sake. Bring it at one place. So you are doing a lot of work in this space for a lot of different categories. So you want to say something in terms of starting with this first point in some way?
So, the first point we tell clients when we have a discussion on some of the requests that we get in terms of information is to differentiate between what is required now versus what you need to have 1.5 years down the road actually.
Okay.
It's very important to segregate the planning for what you want to do for future versus what you want to do for present. Okay. When I say for future, it means how the consumer has moved in the last 1.5 years, and therefore how is it expected to move in the next 1.5 years, and at the same time therefore develop products that are suitable to him at that time compared to the sales that you want to do for the presently or for the next quarter to the present consumers based on what you already have actually. Now when we segregate these two things out, the picture comes out much more clearly in nature. Okay? The trend spotting tells you very clearly how the consumer has evolved out for the last 3 years and what likely is going to happen in the 1.5 years, keeping in mind not only the demographic evolution of that segment, but also in terms of competitive framework of that particular category, the rules and regulation of the marketplace that may change, and what new things can actually come about, plus technology changes that may have an impact on the category per se itself. So therefore, that's a long-term plan. On the other hand, the latest one shows the fact that the awareness has dipped because of non-activity in terms of advertising for the last 6 months. So therefore, I need to push myself in terms of visibility to build the score up and get the sale done, either from the fact that your price offs will trigger that off because there's a huge amount of competition, or the competition is also silent, you're silent, and therefore to provoke the consumer you may need to make a different kind of an offering. For example, he mentioned about the air conditioner element actually, right? But there may be a brand at a local level saying the fact that here is a air conditioner with a purifier coming into play. This can actually, along with your maintaining your room temperature, gives you a fresh air actually into the rooms. I see it from the point of long-term play as well as short-term play.
No, I think what LV said is bang on. One of the other things which done well, attributions will do is, LV spoke of benchmarks and also the ability to do experiments. So I have a relationship, I now know between my inputs, outputs. Now what if, the beauty of attribution is what ifs. What if I change this? What if I switch off something? What if I add something? And you test it. And then again it comes back into the model, and therefore it kinds of creates a beautiful loop. What if I don't do price off? What if I do price off? So in one geography I do price off, in another geography I don't do price off. What is the lift happening? So the ability to use that and be very creative about it. The tougher part is, or maybe boring part for many people is that the mathematical part. But once you do that, the practical implication of what all you can do with it is amazing. For example, portfolio. I have a mother brand, I have 3 other brands. So should I advertise the mother brand? Should I advertise the sub brand? And to what extent? Intuitively, brands know it, but mathematically, do they know it? Should I do 30% here, 20% there? Because that will have an impact on your final budget. And budget optimization, say take a brand like 100 crores. If you are able to optimize and do the same task at 90 crores, it's PBT in 10 crores.
Biggest challenge what we're facing today is that all the players are sitting in the room. Okay, when I meet them, they cannot answer the basic relation between what they spend the money and what happened over. So if that is the case with the so-called the gods of the data guys, what happens to the client side? Client said we are just woken up to the fact that primary billing kar diya bahut khush ho gaya, to the fact that no, I need to do quick commerce. Today my lead competitors are planning 1 day cycle, 10 day cycle they are planning. So they need to manage this also. So this rich data, poor data, or I call say rich people having poor data, is the reason we are struggling with the attribution model.
Very interesting.
And we can't even look at it. We do not remunerate our agency partner in a creative way. We still hold back to the aspect of saying, you spend 100 rupees, you'll get 10 rupees. You spend 10,000 rupees, you'll get 100 rupees. So the model what you spoke of, I'm incentivizing to spend more rather than trying to save the part of it. So it requires a revolutionary thinking for us to wake up, and it is the need of the hour. What we are facing today in FMCG especially is that all this quick commerce has happened in the top 10 metros where there is a clustering is there. You get out of clustering 8 kilometers of paddy field to get the first retail shop. And there's a digital guy sitting in the order and you do it. Okay. So there is an area where your attribution has to be seen differently. So as a marketeer, we cannot necessarily take most of things from abroad. We need to unlearn in India market only. We need to learn our markets to do it. That is the biggest challenge of attribution.
Let's now go to the brass tacks of attribution. So now all this is done. We have looked at short term versus long term. What are the key factors that really are going to affect? You have the buy-in of all the stakeholders. Now what? What do you do next? Let's say you also got all data at one place that I spoke about and you have cleaned. So now what? What is the next that you do? Where do you go from here?
You actually build the model. Okay, you build the model, you test the model. So let's say you have.
So how do I build a model? What do I do?
So you have all these as inputs, various marketing factors. So multiple media inputs, distribution could be one input, pricing is one, competitive pricing one. If weather is an important factor for that category, then weather becomes as many variables which are critical that you believe. And that's where my earlier point, you start with the mental model. You put all those into, you first collect the data and obviously put it in one place. And then of course your sales or sales equivalent, whatever the data is, volume, value, or that depends upon each company what they look for. And then you build a mathematical relationship using high quality teams. Either you do it internally, whether you do it externally. Who are able to essentially has a strong data science and statistical background. You build a model, you test the model. So you have say 500 data points. You don't build a model on 500, probably you will build it on 300 or 320. You hold back some of the data and you test the rest, say the 200 data points. How good is the model? Because if that variation between your model, a model is a simplicity, a simple way to explain the abstract world. If you are too much away, then the model probably is not right. Then again you tinker around till the time you've come as close to what has happened to what the model is saying. Maybe 95% accurate, 92% accurate, or 96% accurate. That is the level of, say, if you can get a precision, say 90% plus for simplicity's sake, 92, 95, then you start to predict what are the variables I can start optimizing, because now I have a mathematical equation. if I increase this, if I decrease this. So I will have multiple scenarios, then I choose whichever is most relevant for my situation. And then I keep repeating this, and the process with machine learning, the model can keep learning. Once it typically takes maybe 6-7 weeks. After that you keep putting the data, it will learn, it will throw it again, you keep doing this, then it becomes your own system. Once you have this, you do a lot of what ifs, which we spoke about. What if I don't do this, I do this? That is where the human creativity will come into picture, or the context of the brand will come into picture. There is a point in time where, let's say, all ADX is only digital, there is no other media, right? So you will not be inputting things like other media which is available today. Or traditional media actually becomes even more stronger, and the role of digital comes down, which by the way is, some of those signs are happening in the West, the emergence of TV, which we are seeing. So the model will start, as long as the human judgment and creativity on what needs to go, that the model can't do. The model to that extent is dumb. The model is nothing but a set of codes or formulas. So even without a model, companies must be doing their sales forecast, right? All our businesses, we do sales forecast. But there is a degree of error. Sometimes we overestimate, sometimes we underestimate. That happens. That's life. But once you do this, then it becomes a culture change. You keep using it. You say, hey, new things are coming. LV spoke of emergence of maybe new forms of social media. That will again go into the input at some point in time. But that is where it can't be so prescriptive. That's where judgment comes in. Hey, there is a new platform which is emerging, which is bigger, and maybe it is now time to look at it. Let's experiment. There is a big role for experiments. You have to sometimes challenge the model. Let's say a brand is spending 10 crores, typically 100 crore brand every month. Now somebody comes and says, creativity, let's do 3 times or 4 times. I'm putting my neck on the block. Maybe something will emerge. That requires courage, conviction, and the ability of the stakeholders to say, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, interesting. What you're saying is that you have to go anti-model
And bring it back to the model. And saying, hey, every time we did, maybe Netflix is a brand which uses this beautiful expression called epic failures. They celebrate epic failures. How many companies will reward you for epic failures? Right. That's where I use the word courage.
They will reward you by sacking you properly.
Yeah. No, that's why I said you need the courage. The courage to say, hey, let's go against the tide. So model has its place, but human creativity, judgment, what if outside the model also has its place.
Karthik's words into a framework. We started off around 1.5-2 years back actually on the ADX data. We have around close to 25 years of advertising data continuously picked up on all platforms, TV, print, radio. So we said, let's see if we are able to use the data to kind of forecast what is going to happen from a channel selection perspective. So the end need was basically for a platform, the sales guy, saying that today or yesterday I had so many clients under my bandwidth talking to me about advertising on my platforms. Tomorrow, will that same guy talk to me for all my platforms that I have under my house actually? Or will he say, this is the divided house actually? Second was, I always go and connect with a customer or an advertiser when the campaign has already hit the mainstream media. Can I predict he's going to come 3 months in advance? So we said, let's pick up the first period of the decade actually, from 2001 to 2009 to predict for 2010. And we said we'll pick up television, which is the easier medium than print and radio in nature. We picked up easier category, FMCG as a category, which is more consistent in terms of advertising. The variance was not much between the reality that occurred with service. So the variance was around close to 11 to 15% range was there. We got confident. We said that let's move this into the next 10 years actually. To a certain extent it matched from the point of view of the accuracy of when the communication was breaking open, but when in the channel selection perspective there was a big variance actually. almost in the range of around 40%. So which meant the fact that the data from 2000, before 2010 was an outdated one to that extent, didn't have much implication on what was going to come into play in terms of forecast for 2019. So you have to check that out, and you have to bring in the latest data of between 11 and 18, I think. The other interesting thing that happened during that phase was that there was a sudden burst of new brands that came in from the same set of advertising. Many of the brands was regional focused, not national focused as that was earlier in nature. And at the same time, they were short-lived. As we transitioned from there to a post-COVID era, we suddenly saw TV actually dropping out in terms of share of advertising, and there was a necessity to bring for categories for the other media, specifically digital. When that was happening, three things that played out clearly in nature. One, there was a dramatic increase, a 45% increase in brands that was actually offering offers compared to 2018. Second, there's a growth of almost around 60% in terms of brands on the regional level than on the national level. So television was getting balanced out with number of brands advertising in it, but there's a focus, intrinsic focus on the regional side coming into play. And three, there was a bulk of duplication. There was almost close to 40% duplication between TV and digital, encompassing what I want to do as messaging on digital and what I was doing on television. So the implications for the sales guy, when we were picking up the learnings from that forecasting for 2023, 24 and 25, were the fact that if you're not a network, a television network, which was having regional channels in place, actually, you're going to be the biggest loser. Mm-hmm. Second is that the offering of TV and digital needed to be put together in place, because that's where the advertisers were hedging their bets on. There were two unique advertisers on television, but decreasing quarter to quarter. And third is that what we considered to be at that time a 8-week campaign actually was now getting reduced to a 4 to 5 week campaign actually. Okay. Campaign bursts itself was shrinking in nature rather than elongated campaigns that we saw in the previous one.
See, it's a classic model where they were predicting from advertiser channels, those point of view. But in FMCG, we should be, your question is that who should do and what about, Karke? Answer is everybody should do the attribution outcome. There is no debate on that. But what is important is that first we should prioritize what I am going to do with it. Okay? That you should prioritize. Okay. The first one is everybody should do. Second one is we should prioritize what we should do, with the purpose as to what I am going to do. Third one is we should start as simple as possible and keep on expanding. Okay. Most importantly, you should what he said about continuous learning and experimentation. These are the 4 mantras to do. Actually, that statement of attribution outcome scares many people. Everybody does that. You should not get scared. We should start.
So, any experiences you have from this? Any specific experiences you want to talk about?
Today, what has happened is that there's a biggest failure of measurement science has happened. Okay? All of us are in that zone today. Today, we do not get a TV data that replicates what is happening in the market. Today, we do not get a digital data which is replicating. So, as a marketeer, we are left to fend for ourselves. Okay, so we are building our own processes. Like large players have their huge amount of resources to build it. Small players have our own way of intuitive way of doing it. We are doing it. Okay, so nobody is saying that I will be dependent on what the outcomes are. So from that model, we have built something what is going to work for us in our own companies, and we keep on layering with next level of data to go with. And it's a, whenever we get to interact with the players, we partner with them and get them to participate on it. So I wish that this mantra to collaborate. Obviously, certain areas we cannot collaborate, but obviously we can collaborate with those areas. For example, we can look forward to from a dishwash category, I can work with Prestige as a brand, which we have worked in the past. Okay, that's a beautiful collaboration for us to work, and we can see some correlation to happen also. That is the progress for us. It is a collaborative effort. We should not miss that word. You are not standalone as a marketer. I will do no. You have to work with all your partners to make it happen. It's a continuous learning process.
I think that's a right word actually.
It's a very
Collaboration.
important,
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
very, very important one, which I think holds good actually across the board on everything. You have any specific experiences to share that will enlighten?
Many. In the last 2 years itself, we would have done a lot of studies across various categories. So, for I'm just thinking. So, one study was on portfolio effect. Which 3-4 brands in the portfolio, mother brand, sub brand, which ones to support. So, does mother brand advertising help the sub brand more or vice versa? Of course, we had certain hypotheses, and data clearly showed us some way path, and that could help us even optimize. In the same study, the client had also done a bit of influencer work, and we were pleasantly, and very small amount of money as a test, even that got picked up, and we could see that the influencer ROI, which is a very rare thing to do, was a pleasant outcome. Though we did not expect much to come, it was 2 or 3 influencers, and that made us think maybe the brand should do a little bit more, and then subsequent some actions have been taken on that. So that's one. The other interesting work on a different category is between brand versus performance. So there's a performance money, there's brand money. In companies which does performance marketing, there's a huge tussle because performance is showing your last touch, is the way brand happens. There is obviously a mix, and what we were able to see was the solo impact of brand, solo impact of performance, and there is an assisted impact of A on B and B on A. It's a very interesting study. The other one is optimization across, say, just on TV itself, which genres do well, which day parts do well. There are things which again may not necessarily sit with what the ratings data is saying. And those are what I would like to call value buys, which probably the seller doesn't know, but we know. And you can say, hey, this is not something naturally fits into the way viewership is happening, but there is more ROI coming there. So can I just uplift little bit more? And then of course there is a buying efficiency coming, but more importantly there is a effectiveness which is getting delivered. On print again there have been a lot of some are not surprises, but some are surprises. Certain sizes which we did not think have emerged. And the other point I want to note out, it's not a uniform thing which I said. You can't take this as okay, if whatever I've said, take it and work. No, it will have to be recreated because the nuances change, the consumer types change, the geography or the importance of the client, of where the client is selling the product, that may change. So it's not like you know this and therefore there is one nirvana stage where no, you keep learning. The other one was between I think TV and digital. The client had a more tilt towards digital and probably sitting on the edge saying maybe TV doesn't work. So the use cases are only limited by your creativity. If you've done the model well, you tested it well, and you can do many things. And my favorite, what if, keeps happening. And actually it's a creative tool in that sense, the creative thinking tool. It makes you think harder, saying, hey, why is this, not just the model is good, but why is the elasticity of something, say a particular media, so high? What is triggering in a particular geography? You can then go deeper.
So we had this principle, we still have it, but I think somewhere we have lost it, which is that medium is the message. So in all this, to what extent is the creative, the story important? How does that fit in this entire scheme of things?
No, it has a big role to play. That's the reason we started the conversation saying that what is the outcome? What do you want your customer to do, and what will trigger it? The trigger is the story part, what you are referring to. And that's the reason in the modeling, which is not about a numerical value. It is about that what is that which went into, which makes a difference. Okay, that's the reason you require a artist rather than a scientist to get a reading of the model, right? Okay, so it is not a It is not a scientific lab where you press couple of buttons, it works. It is marketing here. Okay. So that's the reason you need to be intuitively creative to get outcomes right of it. So we will not accept saying that AI quantification will happen. No, it will not. Even in this process, if you lose your creativity, it is going to take you for a ride. You will be modeled to disaster in that way. So you need to be very careful as to where you are putting your bets on.
This is a slightly different take on what Raghavendra said. Your question is, what is the role of creativity? Does it play, or is it all sounding, just model? In fact, studies done by Nielsen, Cantor, everyone, the first important factor is brand size. The second most important is creativity or creative. And now the question is, can you actually quantify creative? And because you have to get it back into the model to make it.
True.
There are proxy ways of doing it. So one of the way that we do in the agencies, we have invested with some of the AI based tools, which tells you the attention towards the creative. It is not telling you whether the proposition is right or wrong, but firstly the creative should be attentive, then only something will happen to the brain. If I don't even see, today there is something on the table, I don't even see it, then what decoding I am going to do? To that extent, and there is some fabulous work being done globally by companies such as System 1. So if you see and if you take and juxtapose all this, even before advertising, I am using the word advertising at the broadest possible level, you can actually see whether it is a good quality or bad quality. We have so far tested more than 1000 ads before going on air, and with a great degree of directionality, we can say, hey, this is good, bad, ugly. God forbid if it is bad. Our recommendation more often than not with clients is don't air it. However efforts you might have put, because it is good money being burnt on bad. Fix it. Either do an edit properly. Today there are tools which are able to tell you take it's a, let's assume for simplicity it's a TV ad, a 30-second, 20-second ad. Frame by frame, second by second, we can tell you where you are dropping off, even before it's aired. So wherever you are dropping off, go back in that second and see what is not working. So we had a client who had put his logo. It's not being seen. Maybe the placement is different. So the tool is now telling you. It's a large panel and it's a eye tracking panel. So you're not asking the question. To my earlier point, you're not asking any questions. You're just seeing the data. Where is your eye movement actually happening? For it to be attentive. Whether the message was right, whether the RTBs were right is a secondary point. First you have to solve that. And therefore attention becomes a very important metric. Enough is being said, and that also comes into, so when we are planning, we are just not planning pure reach, we are planning for attention adjusted reach. Because different platforms have different levels of attention. So our belief is that all GRPs are not equal. Say an ad in a mobile environment, the same ad in a large screen TV is going to be very different. This probably intuitively all of us knew it. Now there is a number behind it, and that much gives us more confidence, conviction of, and it gives a huge opportunity, because rather than looking at CPM, pure play CPM, CPT, CPRP, whatever, you should look at attention adjusted CPM, and then the ball game, just the optimization totally changes.
In fact, we did a study for Karthik, one of the client of Karthik. Karthik approached us saying the fact that, here is this brand of mine, which is getting thoroughly beaten on share of voice. This is the budget that we have. We have spent that out completely. We're going to do a burst of it. What changes do we do from the learnings that we take from the first campaign action? So we studied the campaign, and we looked at the first thing that we looked at was the creative of the campaign. Now, what is happening was ultimately the end consumer moves between rationalism to emotions. Right? There's a bit of rationalism in the decision that he takes, and there's a huge amount of emotionalism that's brought about that connects with the consumer to make the brand transaction happen. So we decided the fact that we will put this entire communication into a attention testing exercise, along with recording all the emotional movements that the consumer is going through while he's watching the communication in a content capsule. So we used neuroscience in this entire exercise. And when we were doing that, the three things came out actually. One is the attention span of the consumer can rock up to the really high level if there is a star in it actually, a recognizable face in it actually. Okay. So the interesting thing was the communication had a star, but the star was coming in probably in the fifth or the sixth minute of the communication actually. So the first feedback was the fact that bring that lady up front in nature, so that the attention goes from the very first second on the communication. Second, because she's the one who's communicating, right? Second is the way in which that message is being portrayed actually. While there is a communication from a visual perspective about the key proposition that the brand was putting in, that was not being talked about by the star. Because at the end of the day, the consumer, when he's watching it on big screen, may not be in front of TV. Okay? Because it's an ad capsule coming in, there could be multitasking happening in the home. So automatically, to catch your attention, you need to verbalize that communication too straight away, rather than just doing a video part of it completely. So that's a second element that came into play. Okay? And the third element was the branding part of it. Okay? The branding need not always come at the end of that communication. When your key proposition is being attributed, bring the branding straight away up front actually. So therefore, you could collapse that entire communication from a 30-second or 25-second that was to almost around close to 10 seconds or something like that. And that's what Karthik's team then took that across. What they did was they redid the communication, which was done by a creative agency, but the media agency of Karthik did that exercise, went across to the client, took the data in front of them, and said, here is this way in which this is the present share of voice, this is a new share of voice within the same budget that can be achieved, which is double of competition. This is the key issues that are there in the communication. What we have found out from testing is this. We have changed that into the new commercial. Let's go ahead and do that. The minute that happened, the results were upfront. The attribution was clearly acknowledged to the way the communication was reframed and reworked in nature.
Very interesting. Any additional points anyone wants to make?
I think just on the point of creativity, and he made a very important reference. AI can't solve everything. It's not one versus the other. It's a and world. AI will do many things importantly, but today we have many technologies, some which LV has already spoken about. Interesting new ways of looking at effectiveness of creative. So one of the things is because the consumer is not seeing any of this thing that we are discussing. The consumer is seeing advertising, a logo, maybe a moving image, maybe a print ad. So if you look and think like the consumer, it's all you have to optimize for that in various environments. And then the delta change which can come and the impact that can come on the business is huge. One example which LV spoke about, there are many cases where, and I think the shift on conversations on attribute, and he also, Raghavendra spoke of a very important point. How do you bring in those creative thing even into the model? If you have to do it inside the model, unfortunately, it has to be some math. Yes. Right? It can't. Yeah, right. It is. How do I say what is good? So I'll have to probably give it a score, and that is a phase. And I'm sure we will all learn. We will see what is the best way to put it inside the model.
So one way how I think is being done is that you run a model, a brand model of sorts, and that comes as an additional input for you going forward, and then you add the changes in the creatives. You have some measures of creative, then you can link it in some way. That is one
way the model does take partially is through the ad stock. Yeah. Great creative will have low ad stock. It's an inverse relationship. So it is done not from saying, oh, this is a wonderful ad and I'm giving a score of whatever 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the ad stock, if you read properly, that is a closest quasi to see the power of the creative. See, in the old days, Kantar used to have this awareness index model, which is you're trying to put a like one number on the quality of creative, which is basically the delta increase in awareness per 100 GRPs. Of course, the world has moved on. So the ad stock could be one way to do it. But the challenge on ad stock is how do you build ad stock on reach? You can do ad stock on impressions. And theoretically one can argue you can model it, but it's very complicated.
True. So, ideally speaking, when I look at ad stock and reach, then it has to be close to the point of consumption.
Exactly.
Okay. Then I'm getting that purchase, creating that particular familiarity and building that particular ad stock for the communication that I witnessed. Okay. But in today's world, where that possibility exists through digital, okay, it's getting cut out with immediate sale from a pricing perspective. At the same time, communication on digital, which is basically needs to be short communication for brand building too, is getting elongated, which making people skip the communication itself. So it's a kind of a situation where it's important the fact that the creative team, the media team that is going to deploy the funds for communication, and the client who is putting a proposition in front for the brand to get witnessed by the consumers, to sit together to in a single room to align what do I want to do and what is it that it's coming back to the trigger point actually is going to trigger the consumer to go and make that outcome happen.
Just to build on what LV said, we tell many of our clients do the 70-20-10 principle. It's not a mathematical formula, but a bulk of the money do on things which you know have proven well. The 10% or 5% or 6% doesn't matter. Do new things, do experiments, do some of these experiments, coming together, change the entire format. That way you will keep learning. I think what we need to bring back is this thing of constantly learning. It's like a lab, every brand has the opportunity. And how it will get funded is if you do the 70-20-10. So each time when you're doing, you consciously put a small portion of the money to keep testing new things, and more importantly, test and document. Test and document.
If
so
you
that
don't document, it is
absolutely,
a complete loss.
yeah. So test, document, pass on. So when new people come into the organization, they learn, and what has worked maybe 2 years back may not work. So again, retest. So that thing will keep happening. Or maybe what worked, maybe a great idea we would have thrown away because we think it's not relevant. Our own biases may come in, and actually, if you go into the market with that, you'll see it would have been a different story.
Like I just wish that this is a science which we all of us has to follow. There is no way saying that we will not do it. Start small, keep elaborating, keep building, keep learning. That is the attribution outcome model is how we see it.
Good. So I think we have had an excellent interaction, and we have got almost a playbook for in more ways than one, which is what we will finally present it as. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sripad. Thank you.